welcome to Board to Table, where we take a look at education, games, and life. So today what we're going to do is something a little different. I've got a bunch of games here, and they're all historical flavor games, historical depth games. Ultimately, what I'm wanting to do is introduce you to a few of the games that really could work in a social studies class, in the social studies content area, or even in a broader sense of just a historical understanding, historical narrative, historical consciousness area. There's going to be what I've divided into maybe 3 different style types, mechanisms, depth of information type games. We've got some that are pretty deep that really go into helping you learn what's going on at the time, people, places, maps, that sort of thing. Then we've got a section here which will tell you some. They may not be specific to one thing, to one specific historical area, or they may be a game that is an open platform, a playground, just a sandbox type of idea where you can take it and adapt it in your classroom to fit your specific content. And then over here, we've got a stack of what I would like to call more of the historical theme, but there's not as much historical learning. It's more of an more abstractly historical, or there's just certain ideas you can pull from it. And so we'll get to those as well. But I think what I want to start out with is these over here, which are the very historical. So, and this is going to be very fast. I'm not going to open the games up. I'm just going to briefly tell you a little bit about it, maybe how you could use it, that sort of idea. So first, we've got a game called Memoir 44. This is not the game. This is a campaign book. In the game, you get big maps and little figures of soldiers and tanks and artillery, and you got scenery and all kinds of different lands, from bunkers to trees to rivers. And even in the base game, it comes with some of those scenarios. This just gives you more. Just wanted to use this as an example because the box is heavy. It's got a bunch of boards in it. But Memoir 44, for military battles, it's great. And it also helps you with this idea of alternate history, because you know one side's playing as the Axis, one side's playing as the Allies, and the Axis may win, but you're going to play a couple times, and so you're really developing your own strategy on how you would militarily fight that game. But ultimately, you learn a lot about the battles, and that's really where this is. It's about World War II and the fighting. So check that one out. Next, we've got Zulus on the Ramparts, Victory Point games. By the way, Memoir 44 was Days of Wonder. Zulus on the Ramparts is a Victory Points game. It is basically the Battle of Rorke's Rift, where you are defending and the Zulus are coming in towards you. There's cards in there that allow you to do certain things in the game, and it's really a card-driven game, even though there's a map. And on the cards, it gives you some historical flavor text, so you learn that way, and you do get this idea of how the Zulus fought and how tough it could be to defend. So really fits in there with the Memoir 44, but a lot more specific to this battle historical information. Next, we've got a game called The Bill of Rights. I picked this up at a library and teacher gaming convention, and I haven't played it yet. I've looked at the cards, read the rules, and it's just this idea of understanding the Bill of Rights and playing around with it, and you're representing a certain faction of people or government, and you're trying to adjust the Bill of Rights to fit what you want. But Bill of Rights. Next, we've got Cruel Necessity by Victory Point Games as well. It is about the English Civil Wars. This is a great game. You really get to understand what was going on during that conflict, during that time period. You understand who the players were, the sides, what they were thinking, what they wanted, what their goal was. It's a great game. It's a solo game, just like Zulus on the Ramparts, but it can be used in a classroom and taught as the classroom being the player, helping you make decisions. A lot of flavor text on the cards, information. You learn a lot about the characters. Great game. Recommend it highly. Let's move to this one, Lewis and Clark, The Expedition. There are 2 Lewis and Clark games. There's this one, and then there's one, the dice game, The Journals of Lewis and Clark, which is more of an abstract version of this, but this actually, you are Lewis and Clark, and you are moving up a river trying to get to the west and mark and journal and do all of those sorts of things. Historical understanding comes in this game from the cards. You learn about who these different characters are. The rule book has got a great appendix on who they are. So this can be used to learn about Lewis and Clark and their expeditions, the people they encountered, and all of those things. Next, we've got 1775 Rebellion, the American Revolution. This is an area control game where you are taking either the British or the Americans, and then of course you've got the French and all the other people that help, and then you've got the Native Americans who basically will just fight for whoever's there with them. Area control, card play driven. There's not a lot of flavor text as far as the information of what was going on, but it does help you understand how controlling area, how what the Americans wanted to take control of and the British, how that affected who won the war. There are a lot of other things that went into the war, but this is a great one on the surface, and I recommend that one highly. And finally in this area, and these are just games that I own, there are a lot more out there. These are the ones I own that I really like. Lastly, there's Freedom, the Underground Railroad. Another great game. This is a cooperative game, so you play up to 4, maybe 5 people, and you're on the same team. And basically you're playing different agents in the Underground Railroad trying to get slaves from southern plantations up to Canada, going through a map of them, it would be the south and east of the United States. You are using action points to do different things. You have to, it really helps the understanding of, it wasn't just about moving, it wasn't just simply moving slaves northward, but it was about getting, what would be the best word? Funding, getting financing, because this took money. You had to bribe people, you had to pay people. And so it's about working in the north to get together that funding to help this succeed. And ultimately, the game is, you are moving slaves. They're not black cubes, thank goodness. They're just white little abstract, or wooden little abstract cubes. But the interesting thing in the game is you really want to see that happen. And there's this other section of the board where it's got some of the bad people during that time, some of the good people during that time, and you learn about them, the flavor text on the cards. You really get this immense idea of the struggle that the Underground Railroad brought, and this idea of freedom, and the lengths that people would go to see freedom. This would be a great way to teach the idea of freedom, and then as a topical in your classroom, and then bridge that into specific areas. And there are 2 really great books written by Christopher Harris and Patricia Harris, with Brian Mayer, who actually designed Freedom, the Underground Railroad. And this one is Teaching the Underground Railroad Through Play. And it uses this game. But it's got standards, it's got how it fits in with, how it can fit in within your state standards, lesson plans, it's got printouts and downloadable content to give the kids graphic organizers, all of these things. And it's not where you're just playing the game with your kids, but you're setting it up in a certain way every time you bring the game into play. So they will encounter certain people, and it makes it historical. Great resource. And then also they created another one called Teaching the American Revolution Through Play, which uses the 1775 game and all the same things. These are great. It says they're for 10th, 11th grade age, but it can be adapted very easily, middle school, and great resource. Check those out. Now we're going to move on to what I consider maybe the more abstract, where just the theme is historical and maybe the play is more mechanical, but I think you can still get some things from that. So first is The Grizzled. Card game, cooperative. You're trying to outlast the war. You're trying to not let your fear bring you down, and the whole time things are coming up that causes different kind of effects to you, shell shock, all sorts of things. Basically, you're trying to get through this deck to get to peace, trying to make it to the end of the war by relying on each other in the trenches. Great game. One sad thing, the art was by Tignus, and he was killed in the Paris train bombings. So that's kind of sad. Great game, really quick, easy to teach. Not a lot of content you're going to get from it, but it could be a great way of introducing the idea of these men in the trenches that were just trying to live through the war. Next is Euphrates and Tigris, which is a card game version of a larger game by Dr. Reiner Knizia called Tigris and Euphrates. And it deals a lot with the idea of internal conflict is greater than external conflict. But really, you're placing cards and then placing in between those cards under kingdoms, moving your influence. And you know, it's pretty abstract. But even just being on the shelf, if people want to play, it's a historical game because it says Tigris and Euphrates. But there are some things you could draw from this, draw from the ideas. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing in this whole stack is just drawing from the ideas, taking some of the themes that you're playing with and manipulating them into an historical context because they are historical ideas, but there's just not a lot of meat on the bone. But you can put the meat on the bone. The next one is called Artifacts Inc., and it's all about an archaeological company trying to build up its corporation by going on digs and selling stuff to museums. As far as a historical construct, it's pretty abstract, but the gameplay is very thematic, and you do feel like you are building an archaeological company. It teaches some things like fossils aren't as valuable as maybe certain writings and pottery, things like that. Artifacts Inc., great, easy game to teach. Dice management, rolling dice, placing them, really cool game. By the way, the guy that designed this game, Ryan Lockett, has his own company, Red Raven. He designs, publishes, does the art all by himself. Next we have Carcassonne. This is Carcassonne the South Seas, and I just have it in this box because I've got all of my Carcassonne in there from the base game, which is going to be more of the fields and the cities and the roads, but still abstract historically. But it is about land grab. It is about taking land and having the most influence in the land by claiming cities, fighting over cities, claiming roads, all those sorts of things. You can check out my Fast Track Through History video where I use some of the Carcassonne tiles to talk about the decline of the Roman Empire. Great game. Really is this is a springboard to talking about expanding. Next we have The Downfall of Pompeii. This is a Mayfair game. It's made by some guy whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, but just know that he's the guy that designed the game. It's all about the downfall of Pompeii. The game is in two phases. The first phase is your playing cards to place your people out on the board. The second phase is the volcano erupts. And so you're trying to move your people out while placing volcano tiles to show where the lava is flowing to try to kill all the other players' people. Pretty abstract, but hey, it's got Pompeii in it, and whether we know everything we think we know about Pompeii and its downfall or not, I just like this game. I think it's pretty fun. Player interaction is great. Next we have Kings of Israel. Now this would fit into this idea of Christian-themed games. However, the big mechanic in this game is removing sin from the different cities and moving around. But you do see the map of the area, and most importantly for historical, it's got all the kings of Israel in there, the good ones and the bad ones. And when the bad ones come up, bad things happen to you. When the good ones come up, you get benefits. Just want to throw that in because I think it's a great game. If you're familiar with a game called Pandemic, it's pretty similar to that. It feels very similar. Christian theme, I like it. If you're not a Christian, it's okay. It's still a great game and you can enjoy it. And finally, in this area, I have a representative game that represents a lot of other games that I have, which is the idea of resource management and worker placement, where you've got little wooden people and you're placing them out to take advantage of certain areas on the board. This one's called Stone Age, and it's pretty much like you think it would be. You're trying to build your Stone Age civilization by growing your family, collecting wood, stone, gold, and brick to purchase building huts and houses and different things. You're trying to feed your people and raise your production. Great idea on the struggles of beginnings of a civilization. All right, now we're into this middle section where, like I said, it's a little more abstract, and mostly you can maneuver these games into where you want to go historically. Maybe with the exception of this one. This is Roll Through the Bronze Age, and it's just a dice rolling game where you've got a board that looks kind of like cribbage, but you're placing pegs in them in order to gain different things from, you're gaining workers, people, food, wood, army strength, all these kind of things, and use that to manipulate your civilization on your piece of paper to mark it and to move up and have the greatest civilization. It probably should have fallen more into the line of Stone Age, where you can use it as a springboard. But I just think it's a great game. Has a solo variant, love it. Now we're on to these 3 games, and these are fairly unique. And so I think I want to talk about the one that is the most malleable to whatever you're doing, and that is Wits and Wagers. Wits and Wagers, you can play individuals or teams. And basically what you are doing is you're going to be asked a question that the answer is a number, percentage, something, number-ish type thing. Like, how many Legos, out of 10 million Legos, how many are considered not good enough to make it into packaging? Things like that. And then you write it on this little dry erase board, and you place it on what looks to be like a betting mat, like a green mat. You put them from smallest to highest, and then you bet on whose answer you think is correct. And see, this takes the Trivial Pursuit idea, and no longer do you have to be that guy. You know, the guy that just knows every answer? No longer do you have to land on the right space and then get a question in order to get a piece of the pie. This one, you can know Jack and still win, because you're not betting on yours. You're just providing an answer into the pool of which everybody can bet on the answer they want, and then there's odds based on where the answer is on the board. Very much adaptable because it's question based, it's number based, so it can be used with dates, numbers of people. You could probably adapt it to use things other than numbers, but it's great in a classroom because it only plays up to, I think, 6 people, but that can equivalent to 6 teams, and the teams can decide. So great game, Wits and Wagers, wins all kinds of awards. North Star Games, highly recommend it. If you're going to get it for your classroom, I would recommend getting this version and not the party edition or the family edition, but get the standard yellow box edition, because I think it works best in the classroom, especially if you've got a smart board and a projector and you can show the whole thing on the screen. Or you can make your own stuff for it. I'm just saying. Although go buy it because it helps the hobby. Next up is Timeline Challenge, where all different kinds of things come up, but it's all based around these cards, and on little small cards like this, and on one side it's got a picture and it's got something that says maybe Europeans discover sheep, or the invention of the pocket watch, or Napoleon's battle, all sorts of things through history, all different genres in history too. And when it comes up, you're going to be trying to basically figure out the date in different ways by putting them in order from earliest to latest, picking which one came first, which one came last. Maybe the challenge is to decide how many years in between 2 of the cards and their dates. Because see, on the back has the dates, but you don't know the dates because you only see the front. But very adaptable, because give the kids make up their own cards, play the game. Or you could look through the cards that come in it, and there's a game just called Timeline that comes in a little tin. The cards are exactly the same. That's a game in and of itself, where you just set them and try to put them in order. This takes it and makes it on a board with different challenges. Those cards work with this game as an expansion. So Timeline Challenge, great game, very adaptable. And finally, for what I've got on the table here, a game I ran across in, I think, a Books A Million. I'm not sure. It was on sale. It was cheap. And I thought, hey, let's buy it. It's got the word historical on it. But it's called Name Chase Historical Figures, 2nd edition. And when I got this game home and I started looking at it, and I'm going to actually show you what's in here. It basically just comes with a deck of cards, 2 pencils, and some paper. So, in essence, it comes with a deck of cards. You can throw everything else away. It's very simple. Play teams, you can play individuals against, however you want to do it. The interesting thing is, on the cards, it's got 2 different people. It's got a name, and then it's got 4 facts about them, from a harder fact to an easier fact, as in, let me pick a good one here. Let's say Louis Pasteur. So I would say to you, I wouldn't tell you his name. I'd give you the 20-point clue, which says French chemist, and you get a guess. If you're wrong, then we move to the 15-point clue, because as the clues get easier, the points you're going to be able to get go down. So confirmed the germ theory of disease. You didn't know that one, then we go down to the 10-point. Created the first vaccine for rabies. You didn't know that one, we go down to the 5-pointer. Process for preventing milk from going sour. And hopefully by then you will get it. And there's all kinds of people, modern and historical, in here. I don't know that this game with this deck is the most beneficial in a history class, but this idea would be great. Having kids make up their own cards and play the game, mixing everybody, our group's cards together. every individual's cards, because then they're having to research a person or two or three, but then they're playing a game with it and you remember when you play, because game is the universal language. I really believe that. So whether you buy this game, I would recommend buying it just so you have the idea of what it looks like and how to play. And then you can adapt it to your classroom. I think it would be great. So that is what I have for this section of historical games. I understand this is not going to fit into a board gamer's idea of historical games, but I'm really looking at this and how these things could be used in a classroom, even paired with standards, to bring about inquiry questions, or to help answer inquiry questions, or just to enhance the learning. Adapt the games, change the games, use parts of them, set up scenarios that wouldn't maybe not normally happen in a game, which could be a little more random. Set it up specifically for where you want it to be. Have the kids go through it. They're going to learn. I've learned so much by playing these. I know so much more about the English Civil Wars now. It's pretty amazing. So with that being said, I want to encourage you, if you are a middle school or high school social studies teacher, look into adapting games as one of the ways that you are venturing out into literacies that aren't necessarily in the classroom. We're seeing that done with rap. We're seeing it done with Minecraft, and teachers having kids create Minecraft worlds that resemble civilizations and then explaining them. We're seeing that done with iHistory QR codes where kids are drawing. So any way we can take something that a kid shows literacy in outside the classroom, bring that into the classroom to get them involved. It lets them know that we have moved from just knowing who they are to understanding who they are. And I think then they're going to see that we really care, and they're going to choose to belong. Because the ultimate thing is, we want students to know that we care about them more than their grades. Their grades are important, but we care about them beyond that. And I think when we get to that point, we reach this idea that C.S. Lewis coined as agape love, which is the greatest of love, the unconditional love, the love that goes beyond. And I think that's important. So thanks for taking some time with me. I did this video specifically for Dr. Bailey. So I hope this helps some. I will answer any other questions you have. Just thought it would be easier to do it in a shorter video than me spending an hour and a half personally telling you about these games. So until next time, thank you for joining me on Board to Table, where we look at educations, games, and life. Until next time, keep playing games, keep enjoying life, never stop learning. See you later.